thank you, Jen Mashori, for starting us off. And I'm really excited to be with you guys. I presented last year, and so I love working with a lot of CTE people, and I've seen some familiar faces on here, so I'm very excited. I want to make sure that this is very interactive, because this topic is really a challenging thing. So let me start off. What we're talking about is healing and growth after crises. So yes, what is the secret sauce? We've had a lot of crises this past year. So let me share my screen with you. And we definitely have had a lot of things going on. So we want to make sure that we're healing and not just kind of putting things in place, because there's so many things going on. And how can we truly benefit from everything that's gone on and all of the resources that we have? Because sometimes there are positives even in the negatives. And so there are some things that we kind of need to do before we can really get there, though. So great quote here: COVID-19 slowed us down, but what have we learned? The virus gave us time to think, but what are we thinking? So this question, this was Donna Malt's Conscious Cures, the solutions to 21st century pandemics, because we've got a lot of things going on. We don't have just a pandemic. We've had crises after crises, and social unrest and political. And I know families have had, some families have lost people in their own families. We just had a cousin, actually, just found out yesterday, that died of COVID. We had several other friends. A lot of people lost, not just family members, but also lost jobs, lost income in a variety of ways, lost connections. So we're going to look at some of those things and what impact is that going to have on us? So obviously COVID is a huge thing. And that's been kind of the impetus for all of this. When I, was getting ready for this, I wanted to really kind of use a metaphor of cooking. When we think about cooking, that's something that I think a lot of people, either you're good at it or you're not, or you're somewhere in between. I think I'm probably somewhere in between. I don't know. I may think my skills are better than they really are, but who knows? So, but when we think about a kitchen, feeding ourselves and feeding, I know I love to entertain, and I do love cooking for other people, even if it's kind of crazy and stressful as I'm maybe preparing our house or doing whatever I need to do, but I still love it. I love the outcome of what I see on people's faces when I cook a meal that is especially, one of those favorite things that I'm good at. And it's something I can make without doing too much effort, and it tastes good. So, one of the first things we have to kind of look at is what's going on in our kitchen right now. We talk about, this is kind of really life with everything that's gone on. Your concerns with everything that's been happening are valid. One of the key things is that we can't heal unless we really look at what it is that we've lost and grieve those things, and really not look at it as a judgment, or looking at other people saying, well, my trauma is more than your trauma. We have all had a collective trauma over this past year and actually almost 2 years now. And so, you have a right to be concerned. And we've had a lot of things happen, concerns about getting sick, passing the virus to others. I actually just was at the doctor's on Monday because I've had this cold off and on for like the last couple of weeks, and just wanted to make sure, and it wasn't COVID. So, that was good, but I had that concern. Adjusting to the new reality for an uncertain amount of time. I think we thought last September that, oh, sure, where when the pandemic started, we'll be, out of school for a few weeks, but then we'll be back and everything will be fine. Well, here we are almost, a year and a half later, and really not exactly sure where things are going. And, the COVID kind of keeps going up and down. And like I said, lots of other things happening. taking care of and supporting family, our own health, financial. These are just awesome things. I don't want to get into details, but these are all things that have really happened and that many of you have been greatly impacted or, some. Just some data, we know late June of 2020, 40% of US adults reported struggling with mental health or substance use. So, looking at anxiety, trauma-related disorders, increase in substance use, seriously considered suicide. So, these are real. This is not anything that is just imagined in our head. And in some ways, it's actually a little bit of a silver lining by the fact that now everyone recognizes that this is something that we need to look at and we can't just ignore it. Many said they're stressed out. How widespread is the problem? Really, more than 90% reported having some anxiety. 55 reporting moderate to high degree, and some populations are at greater risk of even being impacted by these things. Seniors. I have my husband and I both are at risk, so we have been concerned and aware. Financially vulnerable employees, that 44% of those living paycheck to paycheck have really suffered, kind of that gig economy, especially because, we see that is that a lot of people had to figure out something else because they all of a sudden lost their job or, whatever that was. And it's a lot more than we really realized. 2 in 5 US employees are living paycheck to paycheck, and that probably has even increased more. 50% of Gen Zers. The group's more likely to suffer from a lot of these things. So what they found was Gen Zers are more likely than boomers. LGBTQ employees were 2 times more than heterosexuals. Employees with significant disabilities were twice as likely to be stressed and have anxiety and have, and these don't necessarily have to even be clinical diagnoses. This can be just that they're stressed. It's impacting their life. The emergency department looking at suicide attempts among US girls aged 12 to 17 had increased. So, just looking at this, it's, the concerns are really out there. I think, like I said, one of the key things is that now we're more aware of it so that we can really, really figure out what we can do. And there is more help out there. And obviously, as Jen had mentioned, more resources coming out to support a variety of different things. And mental health is definitely one of those things. And we saw cases of mental disorders rose sharply during the pandemic. So just kind of the baseline cases were, about 193 million with major depressive disorder and 298 million with anxiety disorders. And then adding on, there were an additional 53.2 million of major depressive disorders, and then 76.2 million anxiety disorders added on. That's a lot. Those are some big numbers. So we have to recognize that this is not just something that we should just get over. We should say, suck it up and deal with it. That's kind of an automatic thing that we want to do. And, some people, that's their way of coping, though we really need to look at how do we make sure that we're supporting everyone. We can't do this all on our own either. We have to kind of really focus on what can we do to help each other. So looking at kind of some of the most relevant psychological reactions, again, we had a variety of different things, just loneliness. Everybody has a subjective well-being. We all have, different experiences, some positive, some negative. I know boredom was definitely not at all on my list of something that I had. I was happy to actually be able to catch up on some things. So I had actually some downtime. My husband, who had an accident and fallen 30 feet off of a roof, he was able to recover, and he was actually able to really heal. His whole story, that's a miracle. And I think I shared it with many of you last year. But the fact that, he had that time, and I actually ended up getting more work working from home because of his accident. So in many ways, we were kind of ready for the pandemic. But some of the positive things we saw, resilience and social support were some of those increases because we were a little bit more intentional. I know we had Zoom family meetings, just family get-togethers that we hadn't seen some of our cousins in, a couple years. So that was kind of good, even just to do it via Zoom. But there are a lot of negatives as well. So, everybody's going to be different, but just recognizing that there are all kinds of reactions and there's no right or wrong. Some more adverse effects, especially looking at, this was a family survey, the Kaiser Family Foundation surveyed, and they looked at, identifying sleep problems, poor appetite and overeating. These are some of the things, or any of those above, were all some things that increased because of COVID related stress. So with all that, that's a little, like, oh my gosh, we have a lot going on. And yes, we do. But history has shown that mental health impact of disaster outlasts the physical impact, suggesting today's elevated mental health and need will continue well beyond the coronavirus outbreak itself. So, I don't want that. I don't want you to, I don't say that to scare you. I say that we need to just continue to recognize that this is not something that will just go away. It is, how can we really be intentional? And if we really take that time and learn from this time, it's going to be a benefit. So hopefully my goal for you today is to recognize what you can do to be able to help yourselves, as well as help support the kids that you guys work with. All right, so I'm going to put in the chat, let me see. Let me stop sharing a minute. So I'm putting in a link. So you're going to go to this link, but I want you to think about, what is one skill or characteristic or trait that you that really has helped you get through a lot of the trauma, the storms, everything that's happened, not just now, but in general. What are some things that have gotten you through? And what are some things that would really, what are those skills that you would, if you could magically wish that on your students, what would that be? What would some of those traits be? So go to that link, and I'm gonna stop sharing. You should be able to go to, it is a live cloud. So as you think about, what is that skill? So popping in, somebody put in empathy. That's a great one. Absolutely, empathy is a big one. So as you type in, it's going to create a word cloud. So I'll share this screen. And you can all, okay. So if you get a copy, yes, if you actually just type in, can you all see that? Yeah, if you could just do that. I see people are already popping in. So let me share that screen. Okay. We got some resourceful, faith, empathy, conversations, persistence. There we go. Great. Perseverance. Yeah. Flexibility. Yeah. Great. Oh, people are popping in more so now. Nice. Yep. One thing at a time. Boy. Baby steps. Humor. Yes. These are great. So yeah, these are all absolutely, and you guys can continue to type in there. Concern for others, that empathy, faith being a big one for sure. That's coming up, flexibility. The words that are going to be kind of bigger are going to be where more of you are typing in those words. And I see some people are typing in the chat as well. Networking, caution. Yeah, absolutely. Just being aware of what you're doing, pivoting. All of these are great, great, great skills. Belief in God. Yep. My faith definitely has been absolutely 100%. Um, Being a helper. Great. Awesome. So some of the things that I'm seeing, obviously, as you see this, and you're going to keep that link open, by the way, because we have another activity that we're going to do. But this skill is, all of these skills are, we don't have to think about that. It's like, oh my gosh, we have to recreate everything. If we just think about what have we done, and how can we use not just what's gotten us through in the past, but in the future. So as you're thinking about what you could do in your classroom, what is it that we've been able to do? What is it that that your traits or your characteristics or skills? Definitely persistence for me. I'm a big problem solver too. One of my nicknames is Spider Lady because I can see things from up above and kind of connect the dots. So I'm always like, ooh, all right, well, that's not working. Let's figure something else out. I don't get discouraged easily. And I've seen so many things, that have been crazy, crazy happen. And they not only did I recover from them, but, have come out stronger on the other end. Absolutely, no doubt. So that's something that is called post-traumatic growth. So after a trauma, you can actually grow from it. You can grow from the experience. So we want to think about what can we do to support the kids that we work with so that this experience is something that they can recover. We think about that healing because we want them to heal. They are grieving a lot of things that they've been through, that they've lost, and we don't even always know what they're grieving. But grief is an important part of healing. So this is kind of a good quote. Never once have I gone into a job interview where they've asked me, how did you do in English when you were in high school? They want to know if I can work well with the team, think critically, and be creative and innovative. So this is a superintendent. And this is, I know when I read this, rings true absolutely to me because I don't, it isn't always about the grades. And if you ask me some things that I possibly learned in high school, if I'm specifically using them now, probably not. Though the things that I did learn were really, I played on a basketball team and I was a cheerleader as well in grade school, but in basketball, and I was also on a swim team. And I really learned just from all of those experiences, I really learned how to collaborate and how to partner and have teamwork. Some of those things are really some of the most important things that we can give to students. So it's, yes, the academics are absolutely important. It's, let's figure out how to get creative and really make sure that we're teaching them academics and using those instructional activities to then purposely build their socio-emotional skills. These and actually some of the terms that people don't necessarily like are soft skills. They really, thinking of them more as life skills. That's actually a more acceptable term for these, social emotional wellness. Social emotional and academic learning are also another term that's kind of good. But soft skills is actually, there's more stigma to that. And families, when they hear about this stuff, they don't quite get that. But life skills, social emotional, academic skills are some of those things that can really, that are more acceptable. So the next question I have for you. So we're going to go into the next screen. And the next one is, who helped you to get, actually, I realized I forgot to put that in. So I want you to type in chat, who helped you to get where you are today? Yeah. And I want you to think about like if it's a, you know, somebody in a role, yes, spouse, family, church community, teacher, principal, a community member, a coach. I know one of my coaches to this day, I have just fond memories of her. She really had a positive impact on me, that relationship. So yeah, colleagues, pastor, platoon sergeant, woo, there you go. College professor, church meeting online, father, parents, mentors, yeah, managers. That's great. When you have a boss, but thinking about all of those things, what is it, so to what extent too did that individual help pave your way versus an institution, like specifically a school or college or high school? uh, what was it that was it the individual that had a greater impact on you, or was it the institution? Yeah, individual. Real life experiences, absolutely. It's kind of being out in the field, having that hope, belief in you that somebody else has a hope in you. I know for me, my childhood trauma, actually, I had a lot of, I struggled with self-esteem for many, many years. And having somebody else believe in me is really the only way, that I truly got that, internalized it. But if there weren't people that believed in me, um, that would be, I would not be where I am today. Individuals, what I'm seeing are a lot of individuals. So what is it that you're noticing? Like what patterns are you seeing on what people on chat? Lauren, not to be Debbie Downer, had to really learn to grab life by the horns on my own. Yeah. I've been supported by my spouse, but I've really had to learn my way and find my path. Yep. And you know what? You're exactly right. It's not always one person really helping you. I know for me, I had a bunch of different people, but a lot of what I've done, I've had to, yes, learn on my own. I think that, um, you know, Charity, I love your comment. We're all very similar in our experiences and trauma. Yeah. And just recognizing our humanness and recognizing that we all have varying experiences. There's no right or wrong. And I think one of the key things about, when we look at, that I wanted to really kind of get across with this point is that relationships, either our relationship with ourself or relationships with specific people are critical. And they are, and I know a lot of you said that we're not alone, that, doing things together. That's kind of the theme I really want to get across to you all, is that you cannot do this alone. And I know I have to speak to myself often because I did have to do so much on my own. It's really hard for me to ask for help. I had to learn how to ask for help, but that was a critical skill for my own well-being, whether it's professional or even personal. I actually got better at asking for professional help, but I'm still not very good at asking for personal help. I feel like I'm a needy friend if I ask for that. But it's really not the case, because if we really talk to people, we recognize that we all have things that we can help each other with, that no one is perfect and no one is without struggles. So, always remembering that and recognizing that. So as we think about, again, working with the kids that you guys all work with, and just in general, anybody that we come across, just knowing that 46% of recent high school graduates with no further education are inadequately prepared for the work habits they'll need on the job. It's good to hear the more greater investment with the Build Back Better framework, and that really investing in CTE and more job, the workforce improvement. Those are all really, really important things. So, just kind of again, that theme of it's not always just about the academics, and especially right now, as we've been through so much. So now what? Again, we know there are a lot of things that have happened. We know that, we have a lot of strengths that we've kind of had to lean on, and maybe we've had to relearn how to use some of those skills that we maybe thought we didn't need anymore. But there are, especially when we talk about doing interventions or working with kids, there are lots of, it's a smorgasbord of practices. If you think about 20 zillion different initiatives and all the different things that are going on and the different resources, they're all absolutely wonderful. Some of the key things is that we have to really look at what's already there that we may just use a little bit differently or use it more intentionally. So some considerations, kind of what's in your kitchen is like the what's in your wallet, Capital One commercials. What is it? What are some things that are, when we think of the kitchen is kind of the metaphor for what's going on in our world right now. What is the kitchen is sort of something that we can see because there's so many big things going on in the world. It's kind of can be overwhelming. But, if we look at, so think of your kitchen as maybe even your school, but looking at your kitchen, what are some things, if you can, in your mind's eye, look at your kitchen, or an imaginary kitchen, what are some things that you would find? And I can vouch for these specific things because I cleaned out our refrigerator yesterday because it was garbage day today. And I definitely needed to do that. And so, were there moldy ingredients? Yes, I can tell you, I definitely had one science experiment that was in there. What are those things that were not really, that they maybe haven't been as effective. We thought we were going to love them, but they're not so much. Maybe we haven't used them consistently. I love, Costco has this sliced cheese, love it, but it's a big thing. And if I don't use it quickly, it gets moldy. And historically, I've not ever had an issue, but for some reason it went moldy. Is it stale? Are there things that, maybe something like bread, is it boring or overused? Are there meals maybe that we just have made too often? Like I think of immediately one that may, not that I don't like it, is something like, spaghetti and meatballs. It's kind of like one of those staples. Alan Jones, appliances bought but never used. Yes, I'm guilty of that one too. Or I've used them a little bit. I have a bread maker that I'm happy to sell anyone. But again, what are some of those things? What about not enough ingredients? So, whether it's rice or milk or eggs, those are, some of those staples that we often run out of more quickly. Are there issues with those appliances? So if we think about appliances as, something like leadership support, community challenge, COVID restrictions, those are kind of some of those metaphors for appliances that may not be working. Too many ingredients. You're so overwhelmed because there are 20 zillion different things coming at you. Ingredients that last forever. So are they really safe to eat? What is in those? You have those pantry items. And the first thing that comes, even though I don't think I've ever in my life actually had it, the first thing that came to my mind was Spam. But are those things really safe to eat? If it lasts for several years, is that something that I should be eating? And is it safe for me? Has one ingredient soured the rest? Thinking of in your fridge, especially, like right now we've had politics, the social environment in terms of, COVID and vaccines and, critical race theory. And there's, on every level, people are, again, I just avoid Facebook these days because it has soured, so many of those things have soured Facebook for me as an example. But it's very easy for some of those things to really kind of sour what it is that we, have, that we may like. Recipes that only the cook likes, my example, and some of you may agree with me, hopefully. I grew up, I'm Hungarian and Slovak family, very ethnic. We had some great ethnic meals, halushki, and I make it like dumplings from scratch. Never, whenever I go to a picnic or whatever, and they're saying, oh yeah, we have halushki. Yeah, it's the noodles. I don't believe you. It's not real. So I always, always joke. I was like, yeah, it's not the real stuff. So, but I can tell you that my husband doesn't really like it. So, it's easy, it's cheap. I can make it in my sleep. I'm really good at making it. Is that something that I should be doing? Maybe not necessarily. So I rarely make it. If I do, I make sure I do it for myself and I have some leftovers. So there we go. Are we forced to eat things that are healthy, but maybe not quite flavorful? We think about salads or, maybe you love salads. I'm not a huge salad fan. I like them when they're really good. I get bored with them quick. So how can we make them, a little bit more? How can we vary them a little bit? And how can we adapt? What else? Anything else that you guys can think of that, that you think about your kitchen as, you know, kind of that metaphor for what's going on in schools right now? So when we look at all of this picture is really kind of that smorgasbord. Yeah, stuff gets wasted. Absolutely. I definitely have things that I um, throw out because I just didn't get to use it. And I feel so bad about that. I grew up with, those depression age parents who I always felt so guilty about that. But these are kind of just some examples of all the different things that are going on. You guys specifically, the college and career ready skills, that those are all, really, those are all of these things are all really important. It's just we tend to, get lost in the terminology, but really it is all about whole child. It is really all of these things are connected to the whole child, and not just the whole child, but the whole community. So we want to think about, it's kind of, we want to shift our lens. It's actually better for us to get on a balcony level and kind of step back and look at all of these things from a little bit of a different lens. So, as you can see, this is kind of, again, a smorgasbord of, may look pretty, all different kinds of colors, but it's not necessarily something that, we would want to eat all the time, because it's overwhelming. There's a lot going on. So what can we do? So where do we start? So think about, you can have garage sales. Think about, a kitchen sale principle. So kind of some of the menu planning essentials. So you want to think about pulling out all of the different programs and protocols that you currently have, like taking stock of your kitchen. So if you think about this as your classroom or your school, take stock of it and think about, what is it that I have, in place. And maybe you're just writing them on sticky notes and sticking them up on a whiteboard. I've been doing that a lot, and kind of like, I'll just do sticky notes, put it up there as I think about, all the different things. You need to kind of take that bigger look and really get up on the balcony to see what you have. As you're planning menus, you want to see, what do you have in your kitchen? What are the things I have in my fridge? So you want to look for common and unique features. So, if we're talking about meals, what is my goal? I want to make a good meal that is flavorful, that I'm able to use the things that I have. But it's that really what it is I'm identifying, what is the goal? What are the outcomes? What are the common features that maybe, or if I'm looking at balancing my meal, I have a protein, and then I want to look at vegetables, and I, want to look at grains and all of those things. And fats, am I the good fats? Am I really having a balanced meal? So, kind of looking at features of all the different practices, thinking of ingredients that we have in our classroom and school. Decide what's really needed and priority and feasible. So, what are your priorities? And, again, right now, there are a lot of things that could be on our plate as a priority, and that makes it extremely stressful. It's everyone's overwhelmed. So we need to really step back and kind of prioritize. And then once you've really done all of that, you're able to put things back into your fridge in an integrated way. And you're also able to really look at what you have and set up your meal planning. So if you're doing weekly meal planning, you think about, you have all the ingredients, you have your recipes, you have all of your tools. I know Alice Justice is the queen of homemade soup. So I could, I know she can relate to this, that if you, if you have everything that you need, it's thinking about kind of working smarter. Yes, Alice can. And using things that you have. Don't just think that, oh, I don't have that. Let's look at what I have and how can that work effectively to meet the same goals. Sometimes I've done modifications on my meals. Okay, I didn't have ground beef, so I happen to have ground turkey. I'm going to use that instead, and nobody would ever have any clue. So Alice, anything can become soup. So you can get creative with things. It's easy to kind of, again, get sucked into, oh, I don't have that, or it's too much. But you want to think about how can you truly bring all of the flavors that you have into an incredible dish to actually make your job easier and to make things a little bit more effective. Prepping and collaborating, so that when you really look at collaborating, this is, coming back to, recognizing that others may have skills that somebody may be really artistic, and maybe they can develop something that if they make more of them, they can share with someone else. There are lots of things where people are getting together and someone would bring all of the fixings for a meal, and you do meal prep together, and you put enough for other people to have your meal in a package that then you get to take home a different meal that every person brought. So it, kind of that, how can you think smarter and collaborate in ways so that you're not just, drowning and swimming in what it is that you have or don't have. So some other kind of things to think about is, what are those family favorites? So thinking about, again, menu planning, but looking at this as a classroom. What are the things that are working in your classroom? What are the things that are not? If there's something that truly isn't working, this is where you may want to say, ask for help, or ask for, somebody else may be doing it better. Hey, let me get feedback. Ask for coaching. This is something, it actually is a sign of strength to ask for help. We don't always do that. But it's important to not just know what are things that I like, if as a teacher, what are things that are effective with the students that I work with. What is my source for recipes? So are they backed by evidence, standards, school district priorities, et cetera? Where am I getting them from? Do I have a curriculum? All of these different things. Do I have recipe books that actually are healthy and not just sugar? Obviously it would be wonderful to be able to just make sugar, but we wouldn't last very long. They may taste good and they look good, but they're not healthy for us. So we have to kind of have that balance. And what are our sources, and how do we know if we don't have a recipe? I know I have a Google Home Hub, and I just ask Google, and it pulls up and finds whatever recipes, and gives me the instructions and gives me step by step. It's great. So I know that. What other resources do I have in the kitchen? So again, thinking about our classrooms in relation to this. What about time? What are the utensils that I have? What are the skills that I have? What ingredients? What about other additional help? Do you, maybe you can enlist families. Hey, ask families for what are some things that they really, the more you get to know your kids and know the families, that information is really going to be powerful in you being much more effective. So, some of these things feel like, oh, they take time to plan, but they are extremely, you're going to get big bang for your buck with a lot of these things. Will the recipe satisfy those diverse needs and preferences? So, obviously our classrooms are very varied. We don't always have kids that, we don't have a recipe that's going to work for every single student. But what are those things? The more we can give kids as well as, not just students, but the adults that we all work with, giving people voice and choice are critical for people for feeling safe. That's kind of, all of these are some of those patterns. We want people to feel safe so that they, identify what it is that they have control over and what areas that they can make choice and have their voices heard. Those, I know my stepdaughter, she does ketchup on a lot of things. So she always has ketchup. My brother-in-law used to always carry hot sauce with them. So, other people have different preferences. And we want to make sure that we're not just doing something that's good for most of the kids. We have to look at, all right, let's do some balancing. Let's one time we may have this group that may be more interested in, or may prefer what the recipe is, what the meal is, and then next time we may have another group. The key is having that balance, is that making sure that everybody has that voice and choice. Just giving kids choices on, okay, here are the menu, here's the menu of things that I do in this classroom. Same thing with recipes. What are the things that you like? Ask them. Let them do a lot of the work for you. Are there recipes that are well balanced and healthy? Again, do they have all the nutrients? What about the outcomes? Are we just getting academic outcomes, or are we truly getting, a really well-rounded meal that tastes good, it's healthy, and it's something that a lot of people like? Again, that we get kind of those things, or, what are some things that we can do to modify those? So all of these things, again, when we talk about making a great recipe or menu planning, it's the same in the classroom, that these are all things that we can consider in when we're, working with the kids that we work with. So the next piece is, do we have the proper ingredients? So what I actually even want to, I'm going to back up a second. I'm going to go back to that, the link that I shared with you guys. And if you just scroll over here, let me share my screen. So if you go, so back here was the first, that was the word cloud. And then this one is, so if you could envision your dream classroom environment in the future, what one word or phrase would describe it? So what you could do is go down here and click on text. You can draw it if you want. I actually put one word in for me that came up right away, was empowering, not just for, not just for the students, but for me as well. So what would it be that you would, what one word or phrase would you think of to describe your future classroom? Like if you used all of these things, all the skills that you have. This one's a little tougher. You can also type in chat. I think some people are typing in chat. Ah, huh. Waiting for interaction to start. Okay. Okay, so I'll just add that in there. Teamwork. Great. I'm not quite sure why. No, it should be the same link. Yeah, it should be the same link.
I just posted the link again for you.
Great, thank you. You can also type in chat. I don't want to slow you guys down. And we can even come back to this too. Retype it. Got it. Engaging, inspiring, great. Supportive, yeah. Safe and welcoming. Smorgasbord, nice. Effective, yeah. Great. Oh, you guys have some great things. Encouraging, nice. All right. So those are absolutely, you're right on. You guys are already kind of really seeing, you know what your vision is of what you would see. You want to keep that vision always in front of you so that now they are truly, that's kind of your goal. Keep your eyes on the prize. That's what you want. That's your vision for your classroom, and recognizing that that's really, you already know that that's going to have a big impact on the kids as well. Um, I don't know what that, only if they send the whole group, some send the hosts only. I don't know what that one is. Anyway, all right. So looking at the proper kind of ingredients for this classroom, for a classroom that you kind of dream of having. Um, the first one of the key ones is that evidence-based, that it's really kind of healthy. So obviously for you guys aligned with college and career ready skills and the standards obviously, and but those are all interweaved together. It is not that, like I said, we have social emotional learning, trauma informed, positive behavior, school climate, all of those things, they all work together. And we know that the safer the environment, the more positive it's going to be for all kids and the more academic achievement. You want to go back to the basics, really prioritizing, specifically right now, after we did the kind of the kitchen sale where we're getting rid of a lot of different things. We're doing too many things that are overwhelming and we're not really able to do any of them very well. You want to really prioritize that predictable and safe learning environment, and doing that for all kids, and not just kids, for adults, that so us, we have control of our classrooms and we can do that, but we also want to think collectively, especially with COVID. The more we can collaborate and support each other and really do things in ways that are more school wide, that alone is going to have a significant impact and create a more positive environment. That they lead to students' social emotional behavior and academic growth. It is, the biggest bang for the buck. Doing collaborative activities with academics, which really give you, there's so many instructional strategies. Project-based learning, I love project-based learning. It is really a way to teach and model a lot of social emotional learning within academic tasks. So and it, to me as a teacher, I know for me it's made it so much easier. I just had to create a rubric for how I was grading, or I found some. But being more focused and being more intentional on integration. And don't try to do all things now. You can't do everything. Like I said, you kind of cleaned out your kitchen. Don't say, well, these are all really important. You want to really come back to, pick a small number and do them well. So if you pick kind of the top 3 things that have really worked for you and be more intentional with them and figure out how to expand those, that's really what you want to look at. Staff wellness. This is another critical piece at this time, that all of the research is saying it is one of the most important things, is that you can't support your students if you don't have your own oxygen mask on. It is absolutely, important that you do it. And again, not just you as an individual, but a collective, and I know a lot of times people say, if somebody tells me to do yoga one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. Yes, you don't have to do that sometimes. So one example, drink 10 swigs. So if you drink 10 swigs of your water, this is actually what I'm working on doing. This is one of mine. I'm actually doing deep breathing and I'm getting in water. So it also gives me a time to think and kind of calm my mind. So just something as simple as that. So I'm going to take a drink right now. Simple. Some things as that. Breathing. Breathing is the thing that we have from birth till death. And it is something that no one can take away from us as long as we're living. And we can't give it away. It is that thing that we always have with us. You know, even if it's just deep breathing. I know I have a Samsung Galaxy watch and it'll remind me if my stress level is up, and it'll actually prompt me. It'll prompt me to get up and do some exercise, even if it's just moving. It could be 5 jumping jack, like whatever it is that I want to do. It doesn't have to be that we have to run a marathon or, you know, again, take a yoga class or whatever. We have to figure out what works for us and then replicate it too, and say, you know, again, this is kind of part of that smorgasbord of menu of practices. It doesn't have to be just one way. And we're also modeling wellness for students, which is really important. We want to look at doing things, you know, kind of some of the key things as well are strength based. So whole child and adult support of wellness is not just focused on illness. It's not just absence of, you know, it's not just getting by. It's about really thriving. And so that's kind of a shift when we think about well-being and wellness. That's what it is. It's more, it's away from that shift of there's illness to how can we be the most effective. And we're not just the trauma that we've been through, and neither are the students. So we have to recognize we don't look at them as they are their trauma. They are so much more. I'm doing some ministry work in North Central Secure Treatment Facility, which is a juvenile justice, and we're doing it with the girls. I'm in the girls section, and it's been amazing. And just I've been doing social emotional learning activities with them, and just for them to see is that, you know, see me modeling, especially my vulnerability. Like I model vulnerability to them, and that is powerful because they look at me as I'm strong, but at the same time, they also recognize that I haven't just gotten there because I, you know, had an easy life kind of thing. I talk about what I've been through and how I still struggle. We were watching The Shack last week and I was crying and I wasn't feeling well either. So it was like, you know, they're like, "Are you crying?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Oh no, it's catchy." So it's again, it just they, you know, they're all like, "Oh," that empathy. And we have to recognize that these, you know, so I look at those girls and say, they are not just the trauma that they've been through. We have to look at what are their strengths. And I see Charity said that last bullet is, it's everything. We have to look at things differently. So, you know, looking at how all of these things go together, you know, the environments, that positive school climates, they help motivate people. You know I do much better if I'm in a job environment that helps me feel safe and supported. And, you know, I don't want to go into something that is really negative. And so how can we just, you know, someday we're having a bad day. So this is where it's true. We need to lean on each other. We need to not just do this on our own. We've got to do it more collectively and be more strategic, you know, and help address personal challenges. And so, you know, it's talking about this. So another example, my nephew actually was life flighted from to Geisinger and Danville on a ventilator, kidney shutting down, lungs shutting down. This was just this past Monday. And so, you know, I've had so many people reaching out to me, and also I recognize that, you know what, there are some things that just have to come off my plate, and I'm not going to worry about them because my biggest priority right now is my family and my own self-care, you know. So sometimes we have to let things go, and you know, that's okay. We cannot be perfect. Having partnerships that, you know, we're really normalizing wellness and we're really talking about these things, and not just talking about them, you know, through emails, it really having conversations, focus groups are really powerful because, and having face to face or even Zoom, I've really done a lot of good engagement on Zoom because if I can see people, even if I don't necessarily, I'm not in person with them, but there are ways that you can really, it takes away this, social media bullying or, people making comments to somebody that they would never say to their face. And so, we want to really keep families engaged and do it more intentionally and really like don't think we have to have it all figured out, but then use that high leverage instruction. Like I said, collaboration, using group activities, using, giving choice and voice so that kids really can grow from what it is that they're gaining in school. So this was actually, I already did that a little bit earlier. I thought I had it earlier, but that this is this envisioning, always come back to having your vision of what it is, whether you create a poster for yourself and you have that somewhere. That I actually have a little sticky note and I'll take it off, even though I'm not sure how much it's staying anymore. Perfection is poverty. It's kind of just something, that because I struggle with perfectionists and like just that little quote always reminds me like, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just have to focus on, doing something that's going to be, effective. And I don't have to, second guess myself. So some of the basic recipes as we look at this, kind of finalizing all of it, is disrupt the status quo. So yes, there have been kids, the Black, brown, and migrant communities have absolutely, been impacted more in a variety of ways. The fact that people live more in, kind of close quarters. There are a lot of things that truly are real. And it's not just something that's kind of, this is where we need to talk to people, find out what other people are struggling with. And that if we come together as a community, that's really where things are going to be impacted more positively. But race isn't the risk factor. Racism is the risk factor. There's a lot of stress. I will share, by the way, this PowerPoint with you guys. We know that the amount of demands and that your stress level is absolutely going to impact how effective you are. So the more we can give staff control over their environments, choice and voice, those are, again, what is it that I'm able to create choice with? Sometimes it's just easy as, giving options, like just some things. They're all my options that I'm identifying, but I'm giving options. That alone can really have an impact. These are just, again, we know stress impacts us. And so kind of some of the key things, kind of summarizing this, is that schools should prioritize staff wellness because that's demonstrating positive staff interactions and that shared commitment to student success. What we know is that creates an increased sense of warmth. So it really does, when you do look at all of those things together, let it proof, so we talk about letting bread grow or rise. Don't rush it. We're so focused on academic loss. Yes. But if we try to cram content, we're not going to get there. We need to prioritize relationships and those connections. And what you're going to see is that the academics are going to come. We have to be more intentional. That we want to make sure we're supporting everyone. So this is where staff need to feel supported, which then translates to the students feeling supported. This is an example of using this public health model, is looking at your employee assistance program, using some holistic things so that you can be more thoughtful, kind of some selected wellness teams. These are, looking at doing a variety of things, create a culture of wellness. So this may be some self-care groups, emphasizing more of those whole systems. Do it school-wide as well as you can do classroom-wide. looking at your professional development. And again, not just throwing a bunch of professional development. How can you make sure that you're actually being more thoughtful about it? How do you make sure that the staff are supported and it isn't just, oh, we're checking off a box on the list? Making sure we're giving time. We need to get creative. We need to give teachers planning time and staff and time for collaboration. If we don't do that, no matter how good our programs are, it's not going to be effective. We really, really need to do that because you're going to gain the time back. So it's important to carve that out. And, again, going back to that, making the employee assistance program and just in general. But well-being is really a skill that we can continue to grow, and we can continue to build on. And so pulling this together, what are the greatest recipes? Collective well-being, your classroom, your community, your school, all of those things. And the more we can have mutual trust and intentionally time for relationships, focus on collective strengths, everyone pulling their strengths together, using strengths-based, and then that collective healing, that, our shared identities. Yes, I am going to share the PowerPoint, but it's our shared identities. We have to recognize that we all have our own identities and we can't judge anyone else's. And so these are kind of some of the key pieces. Build routines, student-teacher relationships, be aware of your own triggers, and support yourself and your own self-care as kind of those final. And I have a few things in here that are, again, that I will share, but I just want to help you to understand that, what can we do to improve? It is constant practice. It's little baby steps. There are lots of resources out there. And last year I did share a lot of resources, and I'm happy to share a lot of those again. There are so many things out there. And so I will share some handouts with when I do send out the PowerPoint as well. And so just being aware of some of those little baby things that we can do, Trader Joe's, putting things on the ground, on the floor, encouragement, acknowledging each other, using your positive behavior supports, if you're doing that, but putting things on there around your social emotional learning. What am I going to do as a teacher to support those things? Do wellness check-ins, selected clubs. These were some of the things I'd mentioned earlier, but it really is about going back to these basics, and that, look at those few practices, focus on doing them well, and try and get rid of all the extraneous stuff. Really focus on some key things. And these are some of the key things. The positive, kind of my last message. This is really an opportunity to kind of think differently. What can we do differently? I know I have grown from all of the trauma that I've been through in my past and continue to. So now I know that when something difficult comes up, I know that I can get through it. So we all have to recognize that we need to support each other. And this is an opportunity for us to really come together. So thank you very much. And I will, like I said, I will send you guys the PowerPoint, and I'm going to be on with the counselors immediately after this. So hopefully I'll see a lot of you guys, and thank you for your time.